6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Fight and you may die. Run and you'll live. At least a while. And dying in your beds many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom?
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jim, the teacher. This is my brother, John Wick, the lawyer. He's right over there. He's not looking up. There he is. Hello. He's working over here. I'm working here.
Broadcasting. If I had a button, I hate it is to try to quiet broadcasting.
Just for those of you who are unfamiliar with the button, years ago when we were doing these videos, and we've done these for almost 20 years off and on, but we used to have cuts of different audio. So we would have like the Stooges, the one he's referencing is Mo saying, quiet, I'm broadcasting here. It's
quiet, I'm broadcasting.
Quiet. Yeah. We've used that multiple times for obvious reasons, because we're dealing with numbskulls on the left most of the time. But we would like it if you could like and subscribe to the show, spread this to your friends, let them know about us, get the message out. We like to push back against the left. We like to twist their tail and make sure that they understand that we're taking our country back one broadcast at a time. So, ladies and gentlemen, do me a favor, get the message out, share. Tonight's topics are going to be, I'm going to be doing my updates as usual. I got a host of them. I'm going to talk about the Afghanistan crisis, day 34 of the hostage crisis in Afghanistan, created by Joe Biden. We have day 34 is today. We also have the information coming about how the Chinese have been buying up on a buying spree, buying up ports around the world. We also have the Durham report started to knock on the door this week, brother. We have the Durham report with one of our first indictments. We have some booing from 9/11 from towards the guy who sleeps in the White House. And of course, how can we possibly forget the wonderful college students who are giving a good old message to Joe Biden every week? We're on week 3 of that. So let's get started with that information right now. First off on the list, brother, we have Mealy telling us about his response to the accusations made against him. Here we go. We have CBS News. I want you to listen to this for a minute real quick, because this is a key. I want you to listen to how they handle this.
Officer, after bombshell revelations that he reached out to China fearing a war in the final days of the Trump administration. CBS's Nancy Cordes reports from the White House.
President Biden expressed complete support today for the nation's highest-ranking military officer.
I have great confidence in General Milley.
General Mark Milley, the chairman
I hope he has as much. I mean, maybe he has as much confidence as the diaper he's wearing. I'm not sure.
of the Joint Chiefs of Staff is facing calls from some Republicans to resign after 2 veteran reporters.
Listen to Psaki as she responds, brother.
Of the Trump presidency,
Psaki when she responds
reassured the Chinese, "We are not going to attack."
Yeah, we've heard all that. We know
strike
that.
Against
we know
China.
that.
Pentagon spokesman John Kirby said Milley did nothing wrong.
I can tell you frequent communication with 2 countries like
Simon & Schuster, a division of Viacom CBS, from anyone. Timing.
The former president was fomenting an insurrection, and there was broad concern from a range of members of his national security team about his behavior and fitness for office.
John, so the point I want to make here is you have we know the background. He reached out to China. He was telling them everything's going to be fine. We're not going to go to war.
One allegation is that he said he would alert them first.
Alert them ahead of time. And what do we have here? We have Psaki actually saying, well, she's not denying that he said it. She's not working, she's not trying to shore up anything. She's simply saying there's a really good reason why that was done. And that's what she's saying. I want to make that point because you're hearing a lot of apologists saying nothing bad happened. You hear the official line from Psaki saying,
except that a military junta was established where a military general took over the nuclear codes and made the other generals swear to him. Nothing here, nothing happened, but other than treason and traitorship, because he wasn't elected by the American people. But nothing happened.
We have a question here from Rich Hawkins about how does General Flynn's situation compare to what Milley did? I mean, what Milley did is actually treasonous. What General Flynn did,
and she wind up with him being executed for treason.
And what happened with Flynn, we have
Benedict Arnold didn't do as bad. Didn't do an act that was as punishable as this act.
Well, assuming that these reporters are right, we have to put that qualifier.
It is Bob Woodward, but he hasn't come out and denied it, which is a big problem.
Well, but the problem that I have with everything that's been said is, if you listen to Psaki, well, it's clear that it's because of what Trump was doing, and they're afraid that the only guy who hasn't done this in a war.
It's clear that whenever a Republican is elected to office, it's okay for the military junta to take over for any length of time, according to Jen Psaki, which is why she should be run out of the country.
But John, to be clear, the only president since Carter that has not gotten us into a war, he has not ordered troops to wipe anything out. He's the one who's going to start a war. Think about it.
It's all politics, exactly so, brother, because it's a lie from the left.
It's a lie. So getting back to the Afghanistan crisis, we have day 34. Some U.S. citizens got out, but they're still admitting that there's over 100. I'm sure there's probably closer to 1,000 that are there. Let's not forget that the Pentagon admitted to drone striking against a 10-person family. No criminal, nothing connected to whatsoever the bombing of our 13 sailor and Marines
children
that were at the
for an aid worker. Their father. 7 children and their father, right?
So they did not do enough fact checking on this. I wish maybe they should hire those Facebook fact checkers, John, because apparently
no Snopes. Remember Snopes for dopes? Maybe they'll get it right.
Maybe. My point being, of course, what are we facing? We're facing. They should have checked beforehand, and of course, this guy doesn't care. We all accept that he is trying to do everything he can to take the eye off of him. And those 13 brave Americans who died because of his actions, they died because of what he did. What does he do? He tries to get the headlines to change. And so the headlines have now changed to him being a warmonger who kills babies. That's what he is. He's a warmonger who kills babies.
General now, right? Where's good old General Mealy Mouth Millie when he's got his finger on the trigger of a drone, killing people right and left, right?
Right, we could trust him, right? Because that's what he wanted. Don't take any order unless it comes through me, because Millie's apparently the only one who can make a good decision, except for when it comes to droning people, right? So let's go on, John. Here is the let's see. We'll start with Kentucky. I don't know if you heard that, brother. Here's Tennessee. Hey, that guy even gave you a visual. John, did you see his visual? Watch again. And then, of course, Wyoming. Now, all reports are that these are the college student sections of these crowds. These are not out there, people are coming in. These are not right-wing extremists coming in to push their narrative. These are college students in the stands in their section.
Brother. They are right-wing extremists. That's AKA American citizens, but future citizens.
So I was going to play this. We don't have a lot of time. I want to move on to the next one. Next update. Here we have Millie's whips. They're being used against. We should probably call them Biden's whips, because that better illustrates his actions as this Taliban is whipping women in Afghanistan.
Women's rights, baby. Look at that good old women's rights supporter right there. He's a feminist, that's for sure. He's a Democrat feminist.
He's a Democrat feminist, yes. So just to be clear, that's from Lara Logan. That's why we can trust it, because we know that she is in fact made sure that her sources are proper. So not to let's go to this picture here. More Afghanistan women asking the world, please, why are you being silent to the women? I don't know if you can notice the one on the far side there, brother. I don't know if your screen can show you. That's Kami Kamala there on the end, a picture of her being held up. And of course, they have tape. They're being silent. The question is, why are you being silent when women?
Where's Michelle Obama? Hashtag.
She should be
me
there.
Too. Hashtag.
Well, because she's not in power right now, even though we know she is. Through her husband. Yeah. So let's move on to this gem. Actually, let's go back to here. Here's the 9/11 ceremony. The people are watching Joe Biden as he's walking through. Didn't hear that reported though,
what
brother.
you did to Afghanistan.
You didn't hear that reported, did you?
Terrible.
You didn't hear that reported, did you, brother?
New York City, James?
Terrible.
What'd you say, brother?
That's New York City?
That's New York City. That's the 9/11 ceremony. Being you didn't hear it reported, obviously. New York Times didn't say anything. The racist New York Times didn't say anything. The racist none of those racist magazines, the Washington Post, no one reports this. You don't see it on CBS. You don't see it on NBC. You don't see it on the main mainstream media. Why? Because God forbid we their white knight. We knocked their white knight, right? Because that's what he is to them. Speaking of their white knight, this reporter, their great white Klansman knight, I guess we call him, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that what he was? Grand Dragon or
no.
Grand
I
Dragon?
mean that he was friends with Byrd. Grand
Yeah,
Kleagle.
he was friends with the Grand Dragon.
He did vote for segregation. He did vote for busting, though. So
to be clear, he's friends with the Grand Kleagle.
Right.
Friends of the Grand
Be
Kleagle.
accurate.
So here we go. Yeah, sorry, I just want to be accurate. Apologize. Here we go.
But
the leader of the free world. I'll personally write a check to anybody who can decipher what Joe Biden is trying to convey here.
Yeah, that, what do you want to do with Biden? I want to box him. I should be so lucky. But it is the kinds of things, or, stuff that's coming out of Florida, stuff that's coming out of, Robert E. Lee had been in Afghanistan. You'd have won. No, anyway.
Did you hear that, John? Florida. If Robert E. Lee had been in Afghanistan, we would have won.
Trump said that, though. That's what Trump said. And he's right. General Robert E. Lee was a good general.
He goes from boxing to Robert E. Lee. It's like, where is this guy's brain?
He thinks he could take Trump. It wouldn't even be 2 seconds.
How is that man dressing himself, let alone in the most powerful nation on earth?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Great question. I want to know that. I'll give good money if somebody could tell me how he's dressing himself.
How come somebody doesn't ask the Jen Psaki that question, right? How does a man dress himself in the morning?
So Biden halts the U.S. border wall. No surprise. The crisis on the border still going on. We're still shipping out. These people crossing the border, non-vaccinated, non-tested. We're sending them through red states around the country. They're coming in. They load them up and they ship them out throughout our country, and that's okay. But you and I, if we, they're talking about not letting us get services at the hospital if we don't have a vaccine. The ridiculousness of it. That's that needs to be said. We need to get that message out. How wrong this is. Another example of Biden's failure at leadership. Another example by the entire Democratic Party. I'd like to say it was one man who was at fault, but it's not. It's the entire landscape of their leadership, and many of the people in the upper ranks of the Democratic Party, they are horribly, horribly destroying our country from the inside out. We don't have to worry about China destroying us. We have our own fifth column doing it right now and trying to work very hard. When we see stuff like this unequitable hypocrisy that we see going on with this leadership, that's a big no-no. And then we have this. I want you to listen to John Solomon, John, as he talks about. He's just the news editor.
Collusion were a political dirty trick. Special prosecutor John Durham today put that to rest in indicting a lawyer for the firm that represented Hillary Clinton's campaign, a man named Michael Sussman. He laid out in painstaking detail how Michael Sussman charged his work to the Hillary campaign to develop a dossier, a document that would make an allegation that there were computer pings going on between Donald Trump's office and Vladimir Putin's people in Russia at the Alfa Bank. Even though as he was developing this information and writing it to give it to the FBI, that lawyer, Michael Sussman, according to the indictment, was told it was a red herring, that the information was not to be trusted. Still, he finished the document. He then gave it to the FBI General Counsel, James Baker, a very senior official in the Bureau, and he told the FBI General Counsel, according to the indictment, he didn't do this on behalf of any client. He was doing this just to be a good American citizen, when in fact, all along, he was being paid by Hillary Clinton's campaign to do that work. In fact, as Durham notes in the indictment, Michael Sussman charged his meeting with the FBI to Hillary Clinton's campaign. For more on this, check out the story below.
So the story actually breaks down, and I have from the actual papers filed during the meeting, Sussman lied about the capacity in which he was providing allegations to the FBI. Specifically, Sussman stated falsely that he was not doing his work on the aforementioned allegations for any client, which led the FBI General Counsel to understand that Sussman was acting as a good citizen, merely passing along information, not as a paid advocate or political operative. In fact, as alleged in further detail below, the statement was intentionally false and misleading because in assembling and conveying these allegations, Sussman acted on behalf of specific clients, namely the U.S. technology industrial executive, a U.S. internet company, and the Hillary Clinton presidential campaign, thus connecting the dots between what was done to Trump and that it was a political hit job. And John, where have you not heard this? Again, the mainstream media once again making a case that they are not going to be covering this. If you remember, during the Mueller investigation, any type of, no matter how small, no matter how insignificant, about any indictment, you heard about it for days, for weeks, for months. And when we have this allegation, which clearly links the Democrats to being dirty players, what do you see, John? You hear crickets and you see nothing. Nothing going on over here. Let's talk about something else instead. Again, it's diversion. How long are we going to accept this as a nation, that the media is allowed to be used as a diversionary tool against its citizens by the government, namely the Democratic Party? John, you have any comment about this as a lawyer?
Thanks for apparently that did not come up in any of the pre-meetings for us. Fortunately,
I mentioned that this was coming up.
We don't know if it's anything. No, you did. We don't know if this is anything. The real, if it is supposed to be, according to sources, if it is anything, it's because Mark Elias, who's the Clinton hatchet man, the Clintons hatchet man, who's this evil twit lawyer going around spreading all kinds of election shenanigans. Was from the firm that was next to him and might be implicated with him. And so Mark Elias, if he goes down, then you know that Durham is serious, and it potentially the Clinton and the Clinton organization, the Clinton crime family might go down. But if they don't get Mark Elias and all this, then this is just more slow rolling of the American people. Allegedly, yes, there were all kinds of crimes, but where are the FBI agents being arrested? Where are the freaking judges being saying, well, you know what, you let the surveillance of the guy running for the president. Here's the thing: if you're going to let the surveillance of the guy running for president, you're going to let the super secret American spy apparatus spy on the guy running for the guy to be in charge. Who is safe? Nobody is safe. And if these people don't all go to jail, nobody is safe. It's the deep state. So maybe they'll get Mark Elias. Maybe we'll see if they do, then Durham serious, because then they could potentially roll up the Clinton crime machine. And it's long overdue for those creeps to go off to jail.
So that's it. AJ Hayes, I promised you that we were going to cover it did have a conversation with John on the things that we mentioned. So on my next segment, I'll start off with that, the AJ Hayes questions from earlier that we talked about, brother. All right. I'm gonna,
that wasn't in there either, but all right.
We did talk about that.
Larry Elder. Larry Elder. I only have a few minutes.
Okay, time for Larry Elder.
The great Don Lorenzo unfortunately lost his bid for California governor for recall. We don't know what the numbers are because, of course, California, there are suspiciously 5 million more votes in California than there were just a little while ago because, of mail-in voting, ballot harvesting, and unsecured drop boxes. So nobody really knows what the vote is, but he allegedly got shellacked. It's important for us because. And for our issues, because Larry, of course, is the great Don Lorenzo ran a good campaign on the issues and said, the things that are obvious to everybody else. The reason why the forest fires is because you won't let the logging in. The reason why you have homeless is because you won't take them off the streets. The reason why the economy is killed is because you killed it. All the good things that a regular conservative did in a very rational way. He also happens to be a black guy, and so you would think that would make it. He did great. Amongst he did great for it is, but he still lost from a governor who pretty much a rich boy, spoiled little rich kid who's never done a damn thing in his life except for tag along the Nancy Pelosi crime family and get the windfalls from that and blew the pandemic to such a degree that the lockdowns were the worstly done. They're still not recovered, and they still have it spread all over the place. So the idea is like, can a Republican ever win California? If this governor blew it so bad he got recalled, and then he survived, and some of the polls said it was even to be for about a month ago, but then they dumped. I think Larry raised 20 million, and Nancy Pelosi and company had given him 80 to 100 million to gruesome Newsom to spend. So now, how did they do it? Well, they say they tagged it to Trump. And the reason why it's relevant to us in the MAGA country, of course, is because sure enough, like you're putting out a dollar bill to a poor heroin addict, sure enough, here comes all the rhinos out of the woodwork, and all the rhinos are going, see, Trump. So what they did is so gruesome Newsom just put up pictures of Trump and Larry and demonized Larry by saying, oh, look, it's MAGA, blah, blah, blah. And that means you're a racist and stuff, blah, 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 and all the rest of it. And so there is a lesson in here, but of course, all the usual suspects don't listen to the idiots on Fox, Brett Baier, and all the rest of these morons, and all the rhinos going out. Oh, look, if we just put up another Mitt Romney or John the Traitor McCain, oh, that's all we need to do. Ooh, like they're going to win. No, they'll lose too. But what are you going to, even if they did win, what would a George Bush the first or George Bush the second do? They just blow it as bad as the Democrats. Maybe a little bit slower. How is that any better? The answer is not to put up a rhino. The answer is it's one of the things that we've always talked about. How do you run? How do you make an impression upon the middle of the roaders and the Americans to do it? Well, now the Democrats, and Biden is a perfect example. 50 years in, he's just a mendacious liar who condescends to the people. He looks, they put up that creep and all the Obamaites. Obama is the perfect one. He thinks the American people are stupid, and so they condescend to the American people. But they do a simple message. Now, deep down, they believe that they are so much smarter than everybody else that you're too stupid to figure out that Obama knows that global warming is a facade. Look, he bought a beachfront property in Martha's Vineyard for $13 million or $15 million. If he really believed that nonsense, he would have never sunk 15 million of his own money down into that nonsense. But he believes the American people are too stupid to realize what's going on. Well, now AOC is that she's a true believer. She's not smart enough to think that, but good old Bernie knows the scam, right? So the left knows this. Now, it's not it's what I'm suggesting is we don't do the same thing that they do. There is a place for this. I remember I had one of my buddy defense attorneys. He's a very, very self-sure guy, and he does a very simple thing. And when he's talking about defense, and he goes, "Oh, I disagree with the district attorney. My client is on trial here. It's not my client that's on trial. And then he walks over to the DA's case. He puts his hands on the table. It's this table's a burden, right? And it's simple, and it's a little smoky, but it works, right? Because it's simple. People are too busy to go into a lot of the details. They respond to simple messages, right? So I'm not saying that we dumb down the message. I'm saying we do to the Democrats what they do to us using a simple message. Only we put the truth on it. Now, when Biden comes out and says, "Oh, Trump's a lie, a racist," and which is the biggest lie because of Charlottesville, the biggest lie, of that entire campaign. I decided I'm going to be president because of that racist was running, from a guy who thinks black people are cockroaches. Who's the bad guy? He's a bad dude. Remember that?
Corn Pop. He's a bad dude.
Corn Pop is just a black guy, right? But he's some guy. So the biggest racist has been since Wilson is probably good old Joe Biden. But he'll turn around and project that Trump, who doesn't have a racist bone in his body, as a racist from the nonsense of Charlottesville, which is a patented lie. And why does he get away with it? Because the press is on his side. Well, I say this. Why don't we do to them what they do to us, right? Larry's Don Lorenzo's problem is that he's rational, and that he tried to be rational to a bunch of thieves and racist pigs himself. He should have said, instead of this to good old Newsom, he says, so he should have said, "I want to debate you. Hey, rich white boy, if you really are down for the struggle, why don't you step aside and let the black man in?" That's what you do. You stick it to him, and you say, "You know what? If you don't step aside, you are a racist." Because for the first time, the first black guy is actually running, got a shot at being governor, and you won't step aside. Reason why is because you're a spoiled, rich white guy and you're a racist. Stick it to him. Stick it to him. Show pictures of the Democratic Party. When they're marching through New York and they're all in white clans, and go, "Look, the Democrats. I demand you, Larry Eder should go. I demand you, good old Newsom, who's part of the Democratic Party. I demand you denounce the slaveholding Democratic Party. Stick it to them, and stick their evil to their face. I demand you denounce good old Barack Obama for buying beachfront property." And your carbon footprint, stick it to them in nice, simple ways like that. And what the principle that they do is what we'd be trading as is making it simple and sticking the evil. Take the pictures of the partial abortion where the doctors are chewing up and killing little babies. Stick that on them. I demand you come out and denounce the slaughtering of these poor little babies. Stick it to them, and because they're the ones who deserve it. They're the ones who do it, and they're the ones who, when they get in power, they keep it going. And that's why the worst thing we could ever do is to listen to these fools that says what we need is some more rhinos, like they're going to ever have a shot in California. The shocking, sad part is that it's why we wrote that book. Take Back the Star, is because California is a metastasized evil of the cities, statewise, and can metastasize and destroy the entire country. Just like the cities destroyed New Jersey, and the cities in California destroyed the state of California. Those states and the state of Chicago destroyed the state of Illinois. Just like those states are destroyed, they're threatening to destroy the entire country. And so we aren't going to win in California until Larry, good old Don Lorenzo, rolls up his sleeves and sends out some of his brother Italians to put the hit on that bum. Not not physically, but politically, by making him held accountable for the evil part,
Exactly.
the abortion he believes in, the destruction, the burning of the state, and the destruction of the lumber industry, for the nut job. Fake environmentalists, and the destruction of the droughts and the power shortages, which when you have all those poor people in California that are going to the Walmart, all the really poor going to Walmart because they can't pay for electricity. That's the true evil of Nancy Pelosi and her little butt boy nephew. They live high on the hog without masks. Living in the vineyard, living with AC and her $100.20 ice cream, while the poor people, and the middle class are forced into that poor class because that's their goal. They want to make it two classes: the elites and turn the working middle class of America into the poor class. And that's why Don Lorenzo, I think he. Although I love Carl Jackson, who's replaced him on his TV, on his radio show. Either or, whether we're not heard the last of Don Lorenzo, and he should maybe make another run in a year, and roll up his sleeves and stick it to them, or go back to the radio show because he can still stick it to him there. But it's not the end for Don Lorenzo. The lesson being, as Don Lorenzo's Staff Sergeant father, Marine Corps Staff Sergeant father would always say, and one of the greatest things said in American American history is hard work wins. So to our friend Larry, Don Lorenzo, get back in there and do some more hard work.
Excellent, brother. Thank you very much. We'll see what we can do about helping him out. So on to my section, which is we're going to be talking about the real clear investigations on the January 6th. They did a recent thing on January 6th, the Summer of Love 2020 riots, and the actual January 2017 inauguration. They did a comparison of the damage, of the arrests, and everything, and we're going to get to that in a moment. But I just want to, we got a shout out from AJ Hayes not too long ago about if John here could put on his lawyer hat and just mention to us, because if he pointed out that you have doctors who get held accountable for bad practice, you have lawyers who get held accountable, you get teachers held accountable now for their bad practice. You have another, even though they'll use different ways to get out of it. All these things of these bad practices holding people accountable. Isn't there some way that you should be able to hold journalists accountable for their bad actions, their bad reporting? They're purposely slanting the news a certain way. So, brother, do you want to start off with that? What would you think of that?
Well, what I think he's referring to is, of course, since New York versus Sullivan, the press has been exempted from regular slander laws. Most of English common law was private enforcement. Today it's mostly in fraud. Like insurance fraud, they allow private enforcement, but they're still in the criminal law. I have a case right now. I have a trial right now coming up where it's a private criminal complaint that then can be prosecuted from the private. You don't have to have a district attorney to do it, and you can. So also too, it's almost most famously it's done in civil RICO. So the feds were the Congress was so determined to break the mob that they not only did they have DAs and federal attorneys going after the mob, but they allowed civil prosecution to get 3 times the damages, so that anybody could bring a suit against anybody who was acting like a mob. So it's traditionally the American way is private enforcement of acts, and now it used to be the case that you would go to a court and you'd have your day in court. Because of judicial immunity and various other made up fake extra constitutional judicial opinions, they've taken away what was called your open courts right, your right to have an open court. That's two part. One part is to have somebody come in and make sure that justice, it's not a star court and you can see justice, but the other part is that anybody can come into court and have their day in court. So, you know, it used to be, well, you should put on your case, they put on your case, and the judge is just a neutral arbitrator. Now these judges use it as a gateway to prevent you suing people. And one of the ways they did it is they took the slander laws and they said, let the New York Times say whatever crazy nonsense they do and get away with it, basically. Project Veritas is now rarely gotten by the New York, in a slander piece that they used against him, gotten by the New York versus Sullivan standard to actually bring a suit down, but it's near impossible. It needs to come down. So the answer is yes to good old AJ. We should all be held accountable. Right now, a large section of these elites are not being held accountable. You can't sue the government. They have fake. They have this thing called absolute immunity and qualified immunity, which is a made up judicial doctrine in the last 100 years or so. It's completely made up. Why should they have immunity? You know, nobody else gets immunity. If you screw up, you get fired. You know, if you speed too much, you get pulled over. You go through a stop sign, you get pulled over. Why do these fools get immunity? They're just a lying press, and you can see how bad they've gotten because nobody can hold them accountable. Now, it's not like they weren't held accountable before, but it was done fairly. You know, truth is an absolute defense to a slander or a libel. So you go to court, and if what they said was the true, then you know you could actually defend that. But since this time they've been allowed, because of that decision, a erroneous decision, they get this special exemption, not allowing them to be sued. So yes, everybody should be sued. If it's the case, if you have, you know, absolute power corrupts absolutely, and when you can't be held accountable, you have absolute power. Duh. So therefore, everybody should be allowed to be sued. But I don't want to cut in any more of your time.
Okay. Well, I appreciate that. And that, I guess that goes to the Fox drone being shut down by the FAA, them using the government as a government actor. You had mentioned something about that.
That's an out stuff, you know, government actor. The question is, can you sue a private actor like in the Texas case? Well, you know, and then, you know, Republicans erroneously say, "Oh, look, you can't go after Google and company because Google and Amazon and Twitter because you know they're private companies and they should be allowed to censor us." And number one, that's nonsense because they're not a common company; they're a common carrier. There's all kinds of old law about common carriers. Meaning that if you have like a train or if you have a bridge, you would come up in it like 100 years ago, 200 years ago, when somebody would have a bridge and some judge would say, well, you can always swim across the bridge, so you don't have to pay the exorbitantly high taxes that they're trying to tax you to go over that bridge. You know, like a bridge over in Waddish and Bedingman's bridge, the wooden bridge, right? Say the bridge troll wasn't charging $1, say he was charging $100, right? And they used to say, well, you could swim across the Delaware River. No. They said, listen, you're a common carrier. You can't be unreasonable like that. So you can't. You know. So what really the two ways to go after these massive corporations are, one, because they're the antitrust is they have a monopoly, and the other way is the common carriers. And when they're interfering into the to the stream, then when they're impeding the stream, then they're no longer get that the exemption. And then the third way is, well, you know what they're doing? They're committing a lie, a fraud. They're committing a fraud, which is a lie for material gain. They are lying to us and saying that they are a fair platform, and they're not, and they're getting a big material gain out of that. Mm-hmm. And then the fourth way is they're interfering with elections. They should be stopped because they're interfering with elections in common, and they're giving in-kind money by free advertising, by the way that they're putting their thumb on the scale. So there's multiple ways that these people need to be brought in to heel. And it's not like you're interfering with a corporation. Corporations that get out of control need to be held accountable, just like anybody else. We're not arguing for anything other than accountability, and the way to do that is you sue them and you bring them into court. But you can't do that when you have bozo judges giving them because they're paid off. And as I was told one time, the bank always wins. No, the bank should not always win. That's nonsense. or like the cops should always win. That's nonsense too, right? Now the defense always should win. That's the truth. Go ahead.
All right. So to be clear, now we're going to be talking about Real Clear investigations and their investigation into the riots from the Summer of Love of 2020, as well as the incident in January 6th and the incidents on January 20th of 2017. So we're going to move into that. Thank you, brother, for clarifying that and getting us that information, breaking it down so succinctly. Good job. So what we see here is the Real Clear investigation. So they break it down. Capitol riot 2021, George Floyd riots, which is what I call the Summer of Love riots, as coined by I think it was the governor of Oregon, correct, brother, who said that? Or was it the mayor of Portland? And the 2017 inauguration riot. So I want to start off. I disagree with this right here. The police officer fatalities, they have for the Summer of Love just one. I would throw in at least the 5 additional officers who were killed in Dallas during the summer, because while there wasn't necessarily a riot going on, they are victims of that same mentality that was being pushed. They were attacked because they were police, and it was during the summer. If we're going to say that the people who died from the officers who died later after, or the people who died because of heart attacks in the summer riots, or the 2021 January 6th incident, if we're going to say that they are accountable, then we should also talk about those people who died, because they were shot and murdered by activists trying to, Antifa terrorists. So we should make sure we have that clarified. So I disagree with that number. Police officer fatalities, none for the January 6th, but injuries, 140, over 2,000 for the Summer of Love, and 12 for Trump's inauguration. Non-officers who died, we have this here. We have greater than 570 arrests, and here we have 16,000, John, 16,000 arrests. Assaults, 175, 44, 79, weapons, 79, 60 over here. Look at the cost difference, John. $1.5 million to $2 billion. The difference is, there's just no way you can put those numbers together. I think if you'll note, 50 defendants transported to jail from home states, subject to solitary confinement, abuse by guards, including beatings and denial of routine access to family and attorneys, many held without bail. And then we have 50 detained for the Summer of Love. Prosecutors appealed judge's decision to release in 18 of these cases. So these Summer of Love, most of them got out. Good chunk of them got out. In the January 6th, none of them out. They were taken from their state, and as we know, they were put in Washington, D.C. jails, and many have been put in solitary confinement, and they are not getting access to anything. The prisoners at Gitmo were getting better treatment than these guys.
It was as if the FBI came back from vacation or something.
Right.
Where were they?
Right. So dozens held for months or longer, several held for months.
When Antifa was burning down all courthouses and all things like that, where were the FBI?
FBI was absent. They showed up on January 6th, apparently.
Roger Stone, they were molesting Roger Stone's wife in her nightgown, her 70-year-old woman in bed.
Can't forget that, right. So there's still no outcome, despite what's, there's been no jail trials, and most for January 6th. And of course, these are just facts, John. I just want to make sure before I go any further, these are the facts that were laid out. These are not corruptible. These are data that's been put together over a lengthy investigation. They put a lot of time and effort into this, a lot of technology and a lot of research. So these numbers that they have are solid numbers, and they're not making any judgments. To be clear, there's nothing that Real Clear is saying here. They're not saying one side or the other. They just put the numbers. I'm interpreting them. We're interpreting them. So we're going to interpret them the way we see them, but their numbers are just their numbers. And I think it's very important for us to note. I want to jump ahead here to let's see. This has been classified as domestic terrorism. The January 6th is domestic terrorism, but the Summer of Love is riots. That's a riot. That was one big long riot over the summer. This went on for weeks. This was a 5-hour incident. I think, look at the weapons, if we can look at the dangerous weapons. These are the weapons. We noticed all those people who were hurt, correct? 2,000, over 2,000 in the Summer of Love. January 6th, they used knives, flagpoles, fire extinguishers, baseball bats, tasers, crowbars, tomahawks. So I want you to look at that list, okay? Now, you look over here for the Summer of Love, you don't get to the, knives, flags until way down here, right? Poles and bats, metal and wooden, hammers, wooden cinder blocks. But what else was used by those in the Summer of Love? Firearms, explosive devices, Molotov cocktails, vehicles, rocks, bottles, bricks, frozen water bottles, John, fireworks. None of that stuff was used on January 6th, yet that is classified as domestic terrorism, and these are just considered riots. These level of, what the domestic, the insurrection that didn't bring a gun to the game, right? An insurrection that didn't use one firearm to try to overthrow the government. That is the worst insurrection in history. I mean, you want to see an insurrection? Go look at Afghanistan. We can see the insurrection.
Only
right
if Robert,
there.
only if Robert E. Lee's over there.
Only Robert E. Lee's over there. Yes. So
if you want to look at an insurrection, see Robert E. Lee and 1860 to 1864. Right.
Right.
Usually you have guns when you do it, right?
Right. You go armed. You go
Right.
armed with weapons that will kill somebody, not sticks and
Usually when you're trying to take down the Capitol, you have an army of greatcoats, right? and there's a big cannons and there's battle. Oh, an army of Democrats. That's it. Good point.
Army of Democrats. Yeah.
Army of Democrats.
Yeah.
What was this battle? Shiloh? Bull Run?
Yeah, if you're going to try to overthrow the government, you should probably make sure you bring better weapons than what the government has, right?
Yeah.
Like you should bring guns, right? If you're going to do something like that. But not that I'm advising it, because we already saw what happened in 1860 when the real insurrection happened. That's not allowed. You don't do that kind of thing. So they're shooting. So the incidents, the violent protester attacks, John, in the January 6th, they're using the poles and bats and trying to trample people. In the Summer of Love, we have shooting at officers, throwing Molotov cocktails, standing at skirmish lines or behind officers to trap them, between fire and protesters, throwing dangerous objects at officers from elevated position, peaceful protesters as human shields. So mostly peaceful. Remember that, John, except for the human shield part. Targeting officers' eyes with laser, doxing police officers, aggressive tactics to free arrestees from police custody, use of weapons caches and snack vans to conceal weapons. But, John, not an insurrection. The insurrection is the people who brought sticks to overthrow the government. And, of course, I want to get down here.
Nobody burnt down a city on January 6th.
Right. I wanted to get down to the way that the judges handled it. Claims. So the Summer of Love, claims of unprecedented wave of federal prosecutions against excessive pretrial detention. So that's the Summer of Love. But when we look over here, John, they have the judges. So we have judges and prosecutors have cited defendants' views regarding elections as indicating their danger. So in other words, nothing about what we clearly see that there's many of those who were in the Summer of Love who said, burn this effer down. We're going to burn this city down. We're going to destroy this city. We're going to, all these threats. We have a representative of Congress saying that thing. Remember Maxine Waters saying if the trial didn't go the right way, they was going to burn the city down or something like that.
Yeah.
Going after Republicans. We have all of that. And just the their views the January 6th, the views of these individuals was enough for them to be indicated as dangerous. But I want to scroll down here to the bottom. Where is it? The attorney provided reading lists. So, right, where is it? Hours of footage, publishing close. Other anomalies: slow walking of trials. One court-appointed attorney provided reading lists to defendants to educate clients and dissuade them from purportedly wrong-headed views. Another court-appointed attorney representing the QAnon shaman disparaged January 6 defendants in a May 2021 interview with talking points. Memo stating a lot of these defendants, they're all fucking short bus people. At least one judge has questioned whether the Justice Department is flouting the Constitution's speedy trial clause. So, John, I mean, come on. Come on. You don't get an attorney who's trying. I mean, it's clear. That's the Sixth Amendment. You're speedy, competent trial. You have a lawyer. It's bad enough that the judges are clearly against you with the comment at the top. But then you have this one saying they're all short bus. They're all short bus people, or the other one giving them literature saying, hey, you're an idiot, and this is what you shouldn't be doing. Instead, do this. I'm going to stop there. It goes on more. I mean, it's just one more. Oh, I will say the fallout. Let's talk about the fallout. This is created a complete, our country is now under siege by our government. Our country, the citizens of our country are under siege by our government. Everything we're saying and doing is now being checked and rechecked and back checked. And so everything you say or do is being monitored in every way possible because of your views, as that judge said. It's just your danger, as the judge pointed out before, in that because of your views. However, the people who actually burned down cities and tried to, and actually in the state of Washington, in Seattle, overthrew a section of the government in that town, in that city of Seattle. They threw out the government officials and managed it themselves. They actually did successfully have for several days an insurrection, brother. I mean, that is just okay. And the outcome of the Summer of Love is highest homicides in decades, the worst criminal acts against people. People are afraid of living in the cities. They're fleeing the cities, and our country is on a downward turn. The cities, as bad as they were, are now worse because of this, and because of the police retirements and police officers being defunded. All of it, John, has managed to destroy what little good was left in our cities and have turned them into crime zones. They are now, we don't no longer just have Escape from New York, John. We have New York City that's not just the criminal where criminals reign. We have now multiple throughout the entire country because of the Summer of Love riots. That is my report.
Cool. So on to the next one.
On to. Oh wait, I gotta get the pugs. I didn't get them.
Pugnando pro Dio. Fighting for God. We're not doing apologetics, because I know some idiot's going to say, oh, it's not about apologizing. Yeah, it sort of is. We're not going to apologize for God. God doesn't need us, first of all, apologizing for him. And every day we need to go to our knees and apologize for what happened today to God. So we're not doing any apologetics. We're doing Pugnando pro Dio, meaning fighting for God. And so to this segment, it's kind of topical, but it's going to have a lot of history in it, which you should enjoy, brother. So the idea was, if I can show a correlation, a connected dots between the words of Jesus Christ and how they affect us today, and then I can show that these words were not merely a man's words. Oh, look at the pugs! I love the pugs. I'll just sit here and watch the pugs all day. Then these are words that have an import that beyond any man's, because as Gamaliel doing, just a little back up in the Acts, in the beginning of the Acts. The apostles were going around preaching the words of Jesus, and they kept running afoul of the Pharisees, who said, "Hey, knock that off! We killed Jesus, we'll kill you." And law professor Gamaliel stood up and said, "Well, wait a minute. this is the thing that's been going on for a couple of times. You had Judea, the Galilean. You had the Thulia, who thought he was somebody. You know, they stood up. They had like 400 followers. Then they died. They got killed, and then their followers dispersed. If these words of Jesus were merely just a man's word, then the same thing will happen to them. I say we do nothing, but because if they are something, and then we fight it, you might as well be fighting against God, and that's where we get the pugnando pro Dio. And so, since a lot of our brothers need scientific proof, if I can show that those words have import, that those words have changed our society today, then those words aren't just merely a man's words. They're scientific proof, but by the form of various societies that and throughout history that have been changed by those words. Those words have to have more import than just a man's word. So last week we handled the famous scene where the Pharisees have asked, or Herodians had asked Jesus, should we pay the taxes to Rome, expecting that they would have him. If they pay the taxes, then if Jesus says pay the taxes, then he's a traitor to the Jewish people. If he says don't pay the taxes, then he's a traitor to the Romans, and then they could crucify him then. So he says, do you have a denarius? And they say, yes. Pull it out. And he says, whose face is on there? And it's Caesar's face. And he says, well, then render unto Caesar's what is Caesar's, and render unto God's what is God's. And from both sides, we go, well, that's like the perfect answer. But it's beyond a perfect answer. Now, that was actually used in the basis of a lot of people up through the 16th century to justify the idea that Christians are supposed to go along with the authority, even like the Catholic Church, of their betters, authority of the civil government, and do whatever Caesar says. But if you look how deep that question was, last week we handled it with property. This week we're going to the implications that were for freedom of speech, religion, and today with the mask mandates and the vaccine. They are all connected. So through 2,000 years of thinking about those terms, render unto Caesar Caesar's and render unto God's God's, you realize the deeper understanding of that is that only Caesar only gets his stupid face on a stupid coin. Everything else is God's. Now, it really hit the fan, or as we would say, the Shiite or Shiite, depending which way you want to spell Old English, Shite, the Shiite or Shiite, how it really hit the fan was in the 1600s. One of the things that when the English king Henry VIII just declared himself a Protestant and took over the government, he took also over the church. And so from the early 1500s and 1600s was this battle. Whenever the Catholics were in charge, they would proceed to kill and murder and remove Protestants. And whenever the Protestants were in charge, they would proceed to kill and murder the Catholics. And so there's this interesting religious war going on in England. And so the 1600s really saw that coming to a head. And it saw it coming to a head when James I, the guy who wrote who commissioned the founding of the King James Bible, wrote a piece. He wanted more taxes, and last week we handled that end of it. If you look, an economic historian will go, look, the whole 1600s, 17th century was about, it was from an economic perspective, was an economic struggle between the king wanting more taxes and the parliament resisting that. But there was a deeper struggle going on for the soul of individuals. The king, because James I / James VI, asserted, because he wrote a book on it, that was an absolute monarchy, and he had a complete power, and that nobody could tell him what to do. He inherited his power from the apostles, and what he dictated was the way everybody was supposed to go. And so when he took over as a Protestant, well, then everybody had to become Protestant in his particular sect of Protestantism. And so he asserted that power. And so last week we handled the economic and the property version of that. This week, though, that war had consequences too. That war of whether you and the individual have the right to determine your individual thoughts, or the king, worked itself out in the 1600s. And then, so famously, you would have the English Civil Wars, the various English Civil Wars, where Parliament would revolt, and then Oliver Cromwell came in and became like a president of the Commonwealth, and then he became dictator. Then he died, and then you had the Restoration, and then you had James II, and then I'm sorry, Charles II first, and then James II. And then you have finally in 1688 the Glorious Revolution, where they put the goddamn Germans on. The current king line, good old Charles and Queen Elizabeth. So anyway, in that time period is the crucial time period of that really those because of William Penn and the various people that they became the founders of the founding fathers, and they would go over and 100 years later they would create documents like the Bill of Rights based on this struggle. And now in when the James II came back, Parliament at that point Parliament didn't want to fight anymore, and they were allowing the Restoration. And James II passed a bunch of laws. I'm sorry, Charles II passed a bunch of laws which will be eerily familiar, and these are called the Clarion Codes. And one of them was in '61 was the Cooperation Act, which required all municipal officials to take Anglican communion, and rejected banned all nonconformists, which is religious. Now, does anybody say like you have to take communion almost like a vaccination? In '62. They passed the Act of Uniformity, forcing a common book of prayer, and that 2,000 clergy were forced to resign. In '64 was the Convenable Act, which forbade unauthorized worship and gatherings of more than 5 people. See pandemic 2020. It's eerily the same. And then in '65, the 5 Mile Act, which aimed at nonconformist ministers, requiring them not to be near 5 miles. Now it's really very important to us because about that time, a young man who was just out from the Lincoln Inn, which is one of the 6 law schools that day then, and his buddy were walking by one of these closed down churches. Closed down church, anybody? And there was a crowd outside, and somebody was trying to speak, so he got up and spoke. And then a couple constables saw him speaking in violation of the Clarion Codes, grabbed him off and threw him in jail. Now, he happened to be a Quaker, and the Quakers were sweethearts. They believed they would have meetings, and they were Quake there for a few hours, and then they had some quaint customs that would wind up having their ears pulled off and their backs flayed and killed by the Puritans, who should have known better. And some of them is they would not bow to the royalty or to anybody, to the lords. They would refer to everybody as thee or thou because they saw everybody as equals, and quaint customs like that. So when they came into his trial for this guy, young William Penn, the judge told him to put his hat on, and his hands were my uncle, so he didn't do it. And then he took the judge said, "Take your hat off." And he said, "I'm a Quaker. We don't do that," because he knew they did that. And they said, "Fine." And they charged him with being not taking his hat off. Well, that guy spent months, apparently at least 2 periods of 6 months in jail, was finally exonerated by trial, creating our right to jury trial in the famous Bushnell case. But along the way, that battle that he fought for your right to consciousness would be coalesced in what we call the First Amendment. And when it came about, William Penn would then come over to America with the Quakers in the Keystone State. And this idea of religious tolerance and your right to consciousness would then spread throughout the colonies and become the foundation of what we would call the First Amendment. So William Penn and company were really the founding father. And 100 years later, in the 1760s, the 80s, when Madison was looking to coalesce the First Amendment, he would remember back to the Clarion Codes, and that's why it's a right to assembly. And that's why today, the First Amendment protects not only your right to speak, but also your right to assemble, and everything from burning flags, to stripping, because it's more than just speech. And you look at it today, and the shocking devolution of the attempt of tyranny from the left and the by the Bidens and the Democrats need to polarize us and to force us to comply. It's an out and out assault on our time honored American traditions. And look at it, whether you're going to force to wear a mask or not, you're as an American, you're the one who's decided that whether you should be forced to take a vaccination or communion. It's the same argument, and it's the same violations of your God-given freedom that was fought over and won back in the 1670s England, transferred over to America, and then I had good old Madison and the boys, enshrine in the actual Constitution and Bill of Rights, and should be our bedrock American principles. The only people who don't believe that are un-American. It is as American as the domestic right of self-defense and the Second Amendment, which should have actually been the first. But there is no more core American principle than this right to consciousness, which is the other end of the argument that we were making yesterday of Jesus's words. Render on to Caesar Caesar's, and render on to God's gods. Caesar thought he was God, and all he got was a stupid denarius. God himself, Jesus, gets everything else. And he, because of other statements that we will get later, gives to us all our freedom. He will respect our self-determination. He will respect our decision, whether we're going to follow his way, pick up a cross, and go his way or not. But everything else belongs to God. Your right to consciousness belongs to God, who gave it to us, to us individuals, and it is our rights given to us, our God-given rights from Jesus. And so those words, render on to Caesar, have that dual meaning to us. So back to our scientific history, the states are a laboratory our states are a laboratory, like Brandeis says. And so the 50 states, in a famous decision where it said, well, each state will do it differently. Like California is a failed state. We'll see how they do it. Illinois is a failed state. New Jersey are failed states. But successful states like Texas and Florida, where for example, they didn't have lockdowns. Their economy is coming back, and they are handling it better. Well, they're just like that's a laboratory. So too are societies. And this idea of freedom of speech keeps it from being socialist, communist, and Hitler. We won't make the mistakes of the Nazi Germany because of freedom of speech and freedom of consciousness. And just like it's your absolute right to determine your right to consciousness, to assemble, to determine whether you're going to be a Quaker or an Anglican, or to what type of communion or not communion you take. It's also your absolute right to wear a mask or not wear a mask, and also your absolute right to take a vaccination or not a vaccination. And because we have those rights, we are more successful. And that would be the scientific historian proof that the words of Jesus Christ are not merely the words of any man. No man, no genius could come up with that. Only God himself. Who is the genius? I know these elites think that they're so smart, but when you get close, you look at them, they can't even keep their own lights straight, let alone look at Bezos, the smartest guy. And look at Bezos, the richest guy in the world, is so stupid that when he finds his soulmate, he forgets to get a prenup with his current wife. Therefore, he's not the richest man in the world because she gets half. So if he was really that smart, then he wouldn't be doing something that stupid. He would, learn to keep his thingy in his pants. So the point being that these cannot be just words of a man, or as the atheist, agonists, and secularists say, just a wise teacher. These words were so profound that they sent a little cracks throughout the society of mankind, throughout the history of mankind, and have resulted in this a complete reversal of human history from the pyramid of Pharaoh, where one thug is on top and everybody else is a slave to him, to the horizontal equality of mankind where we enjoy today, where we can each have God's dream in our hearts and we can each follow that dream and create this amazing society that we have, and create video where we can watch cute little pugs do all of that, only because of the words of Jesus Christ. And that will be our Pugnando Pro Dio Part 3.
All right. Very well done. Very well done. Golf clap to you. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, like and subscribe our show. Tell your friends about us. The best way we can push back is by talking to our friends, telling them about shows like this. If you have a subscriber, or if you want to subscribe, please do. But if you have another YouTuber out there that you like their content, I'm sure they would really like it if you subscribe to them and keep on spreading the word. It's not just us. We're not the only fountain of knowledge. We are, however, believing that we are the best fountain of knowledge for you to get through these difficult days. So please make sure you like and subscribe our channel and spread the word on our show. It's always that little button at the bottom, and this is the time to do the heavy duty work of pushing that so that we can make sure the algorithm works in our favor instead of against us, which is what it normally does. Any last words, brother?
God loves you.
It's all good.
It's all good, babies.
Because God loves you. All right, and ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for your time. Have a great one.
Next command, stand by a power transfer. Time is X minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Fight and you may die. Run and you'll live. At least a while. And dying in your beds many years from now. Would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never